In this tutorial, you're going to make the vase that you see on the screen, and that's going to allow you to practice a lot of the Onshape commands you've recently learned. Specifically, we're going to use a revolve command to create the main body of the vase. You're going to use an extrude to create the spout over here, a sweep to create the handle, and last a shell to make the vase actually hollow the way you'd expect a vase to be. And you're also going to learn a new command called delete vase. So starting from a blank document, notice I named mine Vase Tutorial and then my name, and you should do the same in your document. I'm going to make my first sketch for the main body of the vase on the front plane. If I select front plane before clicking sketch, then notice how the sketch that's created, the sketch plane is already selected as the front plane because that's what was highlighted. And then I'm going to click P on my keyboard to hide all of the planes, and I'm going to click on the view cube so I'm looking head on at the front plane. When I sketch the outline that I'm going to revolve, I'm only going to sketch half of the vase's shape because when I revolve that half of the shape 360 degrees around, then I get the entire thing. I'm going to start by drawing a few lines, starting lined up horizontally with the origin. I'm going to draw a horizontal line, and then a vertical line, and then another horizontal line, making sure that each of those constraints snaps as I am drawing the line in. And then I'm going to start to put some dimensions in. So this vertical dimension is going to be 15. This bottom line is going to be 3.25. And this top line is going to be 4.375. And then to get the rest of the outline of the vase, I'm going to use a lot of 3-point arcs. This one over here, or A, is the shortcut on my keyboard. And at first, I'm just going to very roughly draw those arcs in, sort of vaguely where I want them. And then I'm going to put in a bunch of different constraints and dimensions to get the whole thing to be fully constrained as a sketch. Okay, so now I've got those 5 arcs, and now we're going to start with the constraints. The first constraint, this bottom arc right here, this is the center point of that arc, and I want it to be constrained to be coincident with that line. So the center point is on the line. The keyboard shortcut I just used was I for coincident. Next, I'm going to create a construction line. I can press L on my keyboard to get a line, and then Q to make it a construction line. And then I'm going to draw it from here to here. And the reason I want that construction line is that I'm going to make each of these points, which are the centers of the 3 small arcs, to be coincident with that construction line. And now I'm going to start putting in radii for some of the arcs that I drew as dimensions. So again, D on my keyboard to select the dimension tool. This bottom arc, I want it to be 6.3. This top arc, the radius is going to be 3.4. And then I'm going to start putting in some lengths as well. So I'm going to constrain the heights of a lot of these arcs. So from the top here to where this first arc ends, I want that height to be 3.5. And then notice these 3 small arcs are now doing some weird things. So I'm going to start to constrain them more as well. So I'm going to click on all 3 arcs. And those 3 arcs, I want them to be equal sizes. So E on my keyboard to put in the equal constraint. And then I can dimension just one of them. I want it to be 0.5. And that will make all 3 of them 0.5 automatically. And then I'm going to do another length from there to there. That is going to be 2.5. Oh, sorry, this is actually going to be 2.75. And then going back to this top arc, this center point for it, I want from the top of the vase to that center point, that height is going to be 1.5, which now makes this arc fully constrained. And the only thing that's not constrained is that small one in the middle there. So first, we have this sort of weird overlapping thing happening. I'm just going to drag the arcs that I have until that is no longer happening. And then I just need one more dimension. So I'm going to go from here to here vertically and make that 0.98. And now the entire thing is fully constrained. My whole sketch is black, as you can see. And here you can see all the dimensions if you still need to put any of them in your own sketch. So sketch 1 is done, and now I need to revolve it. So just like I could select a plane before I click sketch, I can select a sketch before I click revolve. And so notice how because I had the sketch selected, it's already in here as the sketch region to evolve. The only thing I need to select is the revolve axis. So I'm going to click on revolve axis, and I want this shape to rotate around this center line right here. So I'm going to click that axis, and up comes the preview of my revolve. Looks exactly like I want it to. Right, I'm making a new part, and it is solid. So I'll click check on that revolve. And that revolve is the main body of my vase, so I'm going to go ahead and name it that so I can keep track of the different features in my feature tree. And then notice how I have some really sharp edges right here. I really don't want that, so I'm going to use the fillet tool to round all of those edges out. So I'm going to select fillet, and then I'm going to click each of these lines where there's a sharp edge, and I'm going to change the radius to 0.3. And then click check on that fillet, and again rename it to be more descriptive. Now I'm ready to start making the spout, and I'm going to sketch the spout on the right plane and create my sketch, and then rotate my view and click on the right side of the view cube. To get the spout to line up with the top of the vase, I'm going to use or project that line. So just clicking on the very top here of the revolve that I have, and then the project command to get a line in my new sketch. Once I have that line, I really don't want to see the rest of my part for now. It's going to make it easier to do the sketch on a blank slate. So I'm going to start drawing the shape of my spout. So I'm going to start from here, vertical line down, horizontal line over, and then another horizontal line extending out past where the edge of the vase is, and then a 3-point arc connecting those two spots, just like that. And then I just need to add in some dimensions. So the height here is going to be 2.75. That dimension right there, the bottom length is going to be 0.5. From here to here, I'm going to make that 1, and from here to here, I'm going to make that 1.5, and the radius of the arc is going to be 2.741. So now I have a fully constrained sketch, and now I'd like to be able to see my part again, right? So you can see the vase and then the spout that's going to be sticking out. I'm going to select my sketch, and because it's already selected, now I'm going to extrude it. And you can see, again, the region that I want to extrude is already selected. So it defaults to blind as the end condition for the extrude. But if we look at what that does, if I do a blind extrude, it extrudes in one dimension right here. And see how the spout is now really offset. It's not centered on the vase. So if I want it to be centered, instead of extruding in one direction, I want it to extrude evenly in both directions. So instead of a blind, I'm going to select the symmetric end condition. And now notice how it's extruding halfway in one direction and halfway in the other. I'm going to change the depth to 1.5. And then the default here, it's on solid, and it's adding to my existing part. Both of those are what I want. So I'll click check on that. And now I have the spout, but it's kind of awkward looking with all of these sort of hard corners at the edges. So I'm also going to use fillets on the spout. I'm going to use a fillet. I'm going to click on this edge, and then I'm going to click on those edges on the other side of the spout as well. Sometimes when you click on one edge, the other edge automatically gets added to the fillet, and that's fine because that's what we want it to select anyway. And I'm going to make the radius 0.3. And I will save those fillets. And then I want a separate fillet for the top edge right here because I want it to be smaller. So I'm going to make another fillet. I'm going to click on that edge right there, and notice how it did the entire top of the spout, or the entire top of the vase, which is good. I want that fillet all the way around. I'm going to select the radius to 0.1. And then again, I'm going to start renaming things to be a little more descriptive rather than just saying extrude 1 or fillet 1. Okay, so now I have my vase and my spout, and I want to shell it so that it will actually be hollow like a vase. So I'm going to click on the shell command right here. The faces to remove is going to be this top face, right? I want that face to be gone. It's going to be hollow. Notice how at first everything's turning red. It can't make this shell the way I've asked it to. With features like shells and fillets, that'll often happen depending on sort of the thickness or the radius that you put in. So if it turns red at first, don't panic. Put in your dimensions and then see if that solves the problem or not. So for this shell, I want the thickness to be 0.25 inches. So that means the material left is going to be 0.25 inches thick and everything else is going to be cut away. And notice how now the shell doesn't have a problem. It's going to show up just fine. So I'll click check on that feature. And then the last thing I want to add is the handle of my vase. So for the handle, I'm going to be using a sweep feature, which means I need to draw two different sketches. One for the cross section, the shape of the handle, and one for the path that the handle is going to follow. So for the cross section, I'm going to draw that on the front plane. So I'm going to put a new sketch on the front plane, and I'm going to be looking head on at the front here. Again, I'm going to click at the very top of my vase, and I'm going to project that onto my sketch. And then I'm going to hide the vase so I can just see the space I'm sketching on. I'm going to end up using a lot of construction lines for this. So I'm going to start by finding the midpoint of this existing line. And I'm going to draw a construction line vertically down. And then I'm going to draw two more construction lines horizontal. And at first they're going to be not constrained at all. But then I'm going to add in dimensions that do those constraints. I'm also going to get the midpoint of, so this construction line right here, I'm going to find its midpoint, and I'm going to find this other line's midpoint as well. And I'm going to force those midpoints to be on the vertical construction line so everything is centered together. And then several dimensions right here. And now notice how all of this is constrained. And then I'm going to use a spline to draw the shape that I want. So the spline tool over here. And I'm going to be clicking on each of the end points of these short construction lines that I've drawn. And I'm just going to go all the way around, and my spline sort of forms a full closed shape. And because it's a closed shape, it actually ends up fully constrained just the way it is. So that is the cross section for the handle of my vase. You can see it there drawn in the center of the vase. And now I need to draw the path that it's going to follow when it sweeps, right? So I've got my cross section here, and the handle itself is going to come out of the vase. So I have to draw that path that it's going to follow. And so I'm going to draw that on the right plane right here. Make a new sketch. And notice how I'm on the left side of the view cube here. I'm going to draw here my path on the opposite side of where the spout of my vase is. The only thing I need to use is I want to make sure my path lines up with this cross section that I've sketched. So I'm going to take one of these dots from my old sketch, and I'm going to project it onto this next sketch. And then I'm going to hide everything else. So I'm just starting from that dot right there, looking head on from the left perspective. I'm going to draw one horizontal line, and then I'm going to draw a second horizontal line below it that is lined up with the midpoint. So I'm hovering over the midpoint here and then going down, so I'm vertically lined up with that. And then drawing another horizontal line. And then I'm going to put some dimensions on these lines. And this video is about to run out of time, so you're going to go to the next video to watch how we're finishing up this sketch.